shine in 2001-9. We looked at the creation of the world in this series, the fall of Adam and Eve, the rising of the floodwaters, God's judgment upon wicked mankind, the Tower of Babel, the consequences, man being spread over the face of the earth, and God changed not only their language, but also, we believe, their colors. Here we are once again. The call of Abraham happens around 2000 BC. That is 2,000 years after the creation of the heavens and the earth, right in the middle of the history of the world as far as the Old Testament is concerned. God calls Abraham. Mankind is really split into two realms: those that steer their boat away from God and those that steer their boat closer to God. Those who look to God as the Creator know that they were created in His image, and they are accountable to the Creator of heaven and earth. He's merciful and full of love. Those who steer away, they create God in their own image and after their likeness, and they go the opposite way. God calls Abraham. Did you hear the story about the guy who got his first boat? I don't know if you've ever been on a boat, but I love to get on the water. I have a boat, and there's nothing more enjoyable than to get on the water, push that throttle down, and the boat speeds up and rises above the water. The suction of the water, because you see, the water wants to pull the boat down, hold it in the water. But when you speed up and you push that throttle, you rise above that water. And the experience is like you're floating. It's an experience like you're gliding and flying. Yeah, is that God calling Skip? That's all right, yeah. Close, yeah. Well, this guy got his new boat, takes it out on the water, starts it up, hits that throttle, pushes it forward, and the boat just kind of hangs in the water. He pushes it full throttle. That engine roars. The water is churning out the stern of the boat, and nothing happens. It just kind of moves a little faster through the water. He can't believe it. It's his new boat. Pulls the throttle back, shuts off the engine, opens up the hatch and looks at the engine, and it's fine. Closes the hatch, starts the engine, pushes it in gear, and the boat slowly moves. He revs that engine full throttle, and it just roars, but nothing happens. It just moves a little faster. It's being dragged through the water. It never rises above and planes off. He's so disappointed in his new boat. He takes it back to the dock, and there's some gentleman there who's been watching, and he says, "You got a problem with your boat?" He goes, "I sure do." He says, "I'm a mechanic. Let me take a look." He says, "All right." They both jump in the boat together. Starts the engine, pushes the throttle, it moves away from the dock. He hits it hard, and the engine roars, and the water churns in the back of the boat, and it just slowly moves through the water. It never planes off. Brings back the throttle, opens up the hatch, looks at the engine, it's fine. He goes to the rear of the boat, the stern, and he looks over and he goes, "Aha!" He goes to the front of the boat, looks down, and he says, "I know your problem." The new boat owner says, "You do? What's my problem?" He says, "If you want to break the surface of the water and plane off in your boat, you must first detach the trailer." The call of Abraham. It is God who calls Abraham to detach from his culture, from his family, from his home, and says, "Leave it and go to where I am calling you to go. God never leaves a person where he finds them. God always calls a person forward. And when God calls a person like Abraham, he always calls a person to detach. Tonight, I want you to consider a question. What is God calling you to detach from in your life? Because when God calls, he never leaves a person where he finds them. I don't know what it is. Maybe God is calling you to detach from an addiction, a drug, a person, a relationship, a career. Know this, if God calls you, he'll never leave you where he found you. He'll always call you to detach. This is where we find Abraham. He has left and detached, and he's with now God in an area, and God comes to him with a challenge. If God calls you, he will challenge you. If God calls you, he will test you. And we read the story. Let's tonight take a look at three things. The first is the context of Abraham and Isaac. The second is the cost to Abraham and to Isaac. And the third is the consequence. Let's take a look at the context. Listen to the words. He, that is God, said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you." Take your son, your one and only son? I don't know about you, but that's quite a challenge. That's quite a test. But know this, God will test you and me. He tested Abraham. Now, throughout the Bible, you will always find, well, God gives the people whom he has called a test, a challenge. Noah, 100 years building an ark. We can remember Moses. Remember Moses? The children of Israel complaining, "Are there not enough graves in Egypt to bring us here?" And God says, "Raise your staff and part the Red Sea." Gideon going up against thousands, and God breaks it down to 300. But I'm here to tell you, nothing throughout the Bible compares to this test. This is the biggest. This is one of those you step back and you go, ooh. Oh, it doesn't square with my notion of God. But you know, that is not what matters. It squares with God's notion of God. And he called upon Abraham to take his one and only son, whom he loves. Can you imagine? No, I don't think anybody in this room can imagine being 100 years old and having a baby. Now, I'm a grandfather of 12. And I can tell you, as a grandfather, the older I get, when I hold that baby that is a grandchild, it's something special, because this is the future. This is, I held my own children, but when you hold your grandchild, all of a sudden you're like, wow. This was Abraham at 90 9 being told by God you're going to have a child. At 100, he has a child. Can you imagine that baby growing up and walking for the first time, and Abraham going, there's my boy. And somebody's going, you mean your grandson, right? No, that's my boy. Yeah. How old is his mother? 30? No, she's as old as I am. Yeah. Can you imagine how his heart leaped every time that boy walked, did anything? And here we are, 13 years, let's say, later. We don't know exactly, but he's old enough to carry wood. And God comes to him and says, now take this boy that I promised you and sacrifice him. That's the context. Let me tell you, this is what the Bible says. Early the next morning, he packs up. I don't know about you, but I'd be putting the covers over my head and saying, I'm not going anywhere. I can't face this day. Ever had days like that? Well, you can't face the day? Well, Abraham had such a day, the worst day of his life. And God said, go, and he gets up. We see the obedience of Abraham to God. We see faith working. Faith in obedience. Let's take a look at the cost. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac, his son, and took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went both together. I believe God had Moses record this just the way for us, the son whom he loved. Who do you love? Do you have children, grandchildren? Do you love them? I got a question for you tonight. Who do you love more? Do you? Well, in the challenge, in that test, let me tell you, God is asking you this question. Who do you love? Because here's Abraham. What is the cost? His heart was with this child. When he looked to the future, this was the child. Isaac, the one promised. When it came to rationale, he's going, I'm 113 now, 120, so I'm not going to have another chance. You know, years ago, this is how you would know the cost of something. Balance scales. You know, put a little weight here. How much is the gold there? Okay, this is what it's going to cost you. You got to come up with this weight. You got to balance it out. Now, if you can use that imagery, here's the balance scale for Abraham. Emotions. Reasoning. This is my child. This is the one promised. Then ambition for the future. If I'm going to bless the world, if there's going to be a future and people are going to be blessed by my offspring, here it is. And on this side, what is there? God. Where's the balance? Where's the cost? Here's where God found Abraham. There's only one reason to go forward, one reason to head towards that mountain, period. God. Reason did not weigh anything. Emotions, feelings did not weigh anything. The future was not found in Isaac. God. You see, faith doesn't have a safety net. Faith goes beyond reason. Faith says there is possible when I see the impossible. Ooh. And the scale was weighed. You see, faith is not blind to God. Faith is blind to feelings, emotions, ambition, career, reason. And it sees only God. On Tuesday morning, I had cataract surgery on my left eye. 4 weeks ago, I had cataract surgery on my right eye. And at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, I went in 4 weeks ago. Cataract surgery, 15 minutes. And I came out and I could see. The doctor put a patch over my eye, a clear patch. My wife took me home. I sat in front of the television all day watching movies, and I could see. Tuesday, same routine, same surgery, same location, same doctor. Go in, he takes the cataract out of my left eye, puts in a lens. 15 minutes later, I come out, and I can see. He puts that patch over my eye, a clear patch, protection so I don't hit it, and he sends me home. In that 10-minute drive home, I started seeing red. And I'm thinking, that's a little different. And I blinked that left eye and it goes away. My sister took me for this surgery and she dropped me off at home. I turned on the television and things were a little white. I blinked that eye and I could see. I sit down and I watch a movie, a show. 15 minutes into the show, my eye goes blind. I can see nothing. I go to the mirror in the bathroom, and this eye sees a dead eye that stares into La La Land. And this man dropped to his knees and cried to God. And I said, God, I don't know what's going on. And I haven't asked for a lot lately, but I'm begging you not to take my eye. I called my sister up and I said, sis, I got to go. I called my wife first and I said, what do? You call your wife? And she says, get back to the doctor. I got my sister on the phone. She came, got me re-raced to the doctor. I went into that clinic. I went up to the front counter. I said, I needed to see the doctor now. And she said, how come? I said, I'm blind. And the eye he just did surgery on. She goes, what? And I said, I can't see a thing. She goes, just wait a second. She races off to get the doctor. Seconds later, she calls me to the back to the operating room. And there's the doctor. Came out of the operating room, took off his mask, and he looked at me. He said, now listen, Tim. It doesn't happen very often. This is very rare. I am thinking, he's telling me, nothing I can do. You're going to be blind. He said, trust me. In 3 to 4 hours, your eyesight will come back. Really, Doc? And he put his hand on my shoulder and he prayed for me. And I left that office going 3 to 4 hours, blind as can be. I get in the car, my sister takes me home, and I'm telling myself, trust the doctor. If you can trust a doctor with blind faith, how much more should we trust God? 5 to 6 hours, my eyesight returned, and I have 20/20 vision. That is nothing. That's the big toe in the water compared to Abraham. If you've ever held your son or your daughter, think of that cost. I'd give up an eye for my boy. I'd do anything for my children. And I know you would too. The cost. But here's the good news. The consequence. Look at this. The consequence. And Isaac said to Father Abraham, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. He said, behold the fire, the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham took his son on a journey of faith. He loaded Isaac with the wood. Now, God knew that he wasn't going to have him sacrifice his son, but Abraham didn't know that. And the two of them went together. Notice this is mentioned twice. The two of them walked together. Why does God mention that? Because parents, grandparents better be walking with their children on a journey of faith. And they go together. Yes, Abraham was tested, but the one who learned the most was Isaac. He came to know his father in a whole new light. Listen to these words. God said this about Abraham. For I have chosen him that he may direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord. Why did God call Abraham 2000 BC to start this new generation of children who are going to listen and walk with their father and learn to shine like Dad? They went up on that mountain. Abraham built an altar, bound his son, put him down on top of the wood, raised the knife, and God stopped him and said, don't do it. I know that you love me. You have not withheld your only son. On that altar, Isaac's faith was hammered out on the advil of experience. He saw his dad. God weighs the most. God first. More than child, more than career, more than emotions, more than future ambition. God must come first. He took Isaac on that journey of faith. And if you're a father here, or a mother here, or a grandmother, or a grandfather, I ask you this question. When's the last time you have taken your boy, your daughter, on a journey of faith? When's the last time you've taken anybody on a journey of faith and obedience to God? You know what that looks like? It's when you shine in your life and make sure God is first. That when somebody looks at your life and the balance scales, they don't see career, they don't see future ambitions, they don't see money, possessions. What they see is God. God first in everything. Faith puts God first. Now listen, it is Isaac who says, Father, where is the sacrifice? Where is the light? Where is the fire? Where is the sacrifice? Abraham says through his actions, right here in my heart. That's where the sacrifice is. That's where the light is. It's my heart. It is with God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. My heart is with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, if anything should move us to walk a journey of faith with our children, our grandchildren, and shine for God, it's what happened right here, this very spot, 2,000 years later. Because on this very spot, on this very mountain, on this very land, a father and a son walked together 2019 years ago, 2,000 years after this. And there a son said, Father, if you could remove this cup, would you? And he was silent. Second time, that son on this very spot, walking up the mountain, not to the point of the sacrifice yet, he says, Father, if you could remove this cup, remove it, but not my will, your will be done. That same son spoke to his father, who he was the only son, whom the father loved dearly. And that father knew the cost. And he said, Dad, could you remove this cup? The answer was no. And they went up further. They went to the place where the altar was, Golgotha, and there was a sacrifice made. His name was Jesus Christ, the only Son of God. And there, on that altar, another son asked a question. Just like Isaac. He asked of his dad, he said, Abba, Daddy, why have you forsaken me? And from this spot, God speaks loud and clear and shouts out the good news for them. Because you requested it. See, it's Jesus who said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Here we are, 2,000 years after that event on the same place, and I'm here to tell you, don't forget it. Don't forget.